China has confirmed it will be sending its peace envoy to Ukraine and other nations. President of China and Ukraine held a telephonic conversation on Wednesday, the first interaction by the two nations since the beginning of the Ukraine war. Kremlin has welcomed the development between the two nations. Chinese Defense Minister Li Shangfu is in New Delhi for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Defense Ministers meeting to be held tomorrow, that is Friday. Li Shangfu will also hold a bilateral meeting with his Indian counterpart Rajnath Singh. This is the first visit by a Chinese defense minister after the border transgression in Galwan back in 2020. A Ukrainian artillery unit has fired American howitzers near the Bakhmut border. A Congo reports the Ukrainian troops are finding the American howitzers easy to handle as compared to the Soviet howitzers. The simplicity of American howitzers is helping the Ukrainians save time. Reports say that fierce fighting has gripped Bakhmut and nearby areas. A dozen localities have come under Russian fire as the troops advance towards two villages in northwest. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has lambasted the United States for denying visas to Russian reporters. The reporters were to cover Lavrov's visit to the United Nations headquarters. For a press conference, Lavrov is scheduled to chair several meetings in New York, as Russia holds the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council this month. The Russian defense minister also pointed out the West's hypocrisy in regards to free speech. He further added that retaliatory measures will be taken in response to the US government's inappropriate conduct. Ukrainian Prime Minister met Pope Francis in Vatican and has invited Pope Francis to visit the war-torn country of Ukraine. The Prime Minister said that he had discussed Kiev's formula for peace for the ongoing war in Ukraine with the Pope. The Prime Minister also said that the phone call between Xi Jinping and Volodymyr Zelensky had been very productive and could prove a very positive beginning for future relations. The Walt Disney Company has sued Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Disney lashed out at what it termed the state's efforts to control free speech of the iconic amusement and entertainment giant. The tussle began back in 2022 when Disney criticized the Florida government for banning discussions of sexuality and gender identity with younger children in classrooms. Soon afterwards, lawmakers passed a legislation that ended Disney's virtual autonomy in Central Florida. DeSantis argued that Disney has been enjoying unfair and advantages for decades. The US House of Representatives has passed a bill to raise the United States' $31.4 trillion debt ceiling by proposing sweeping spending cuts over the next decade. Republicans have tried to showcase Democrats as big spenders of taxpayers' money, which they argue has pushed the national debt into a danger zone. However, Democrats have taken the stance that deep spending cuts would affect programs including health care for the poor and an array of other programs including law enforcement and airport security operations. Australia is to end a decade-old freeze on the minimum wage for skilled migrant workers. The government is set to overhaul a broken migration system that fosters exploitation and favors attracting low-wage employees over filing critical skill shortages. Australia has one of the highest immigration rates within the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. From the 1st of July, a new minimum wage of $46,300 will be implemented. Eastern Congo's Ituri province is seeing a huge surge in attacks by the cooperator for the development of the Congo armed group. According to the United Nations, around 550,000 people were forced to flee their homes between January and March as the provinces of Jugu territory witnessed major conflicts. Though the cooperator for the development of the Congo armed group claims to defend the interests of the farmers, it is one of the dozens of militias that have destabilized Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo since the 1990s. Paraguay goes to polls this weekend. Santiago Pena, the presidential candidate for Paraguay's conservative ruling party, who just closed his electoral campaign rally, is preparing to face the opposition leader Efrain Alegre in the general election slated for the 30th of April. With corruption allegations engulfing his party, the 44-year-old former finance minister is trying to navigate a political maelstrom. Pena is facing rising pressure from farmers to maintain ties with Taiwan. He has been under pressure to open up to China and its huge consumer demand for soybean and beef. Most polls have predicted a closer race between Pena and Alegre. Iran's Defense Minister Mohammad Reza Ashtiani is in New Delhi for the SCO Defense Ministers meeting. The Iranian minister has called his India visit an opportunity to counter unilateralism, work on combating counter-terrorism and extremism together. Iran and India are to focus on growing defense relations. This shall also include regular engagements between militaries of the two countries. During the visit, Ashtiani will also have bilateral meetings with his Indian, Belarusian, Chinese and Tajik counterparts. Iran will be becoming full members of the grouping this year at the Delhi SCO Summit in July. The Sudanese army has pounded the paramilitaries in Khartoum with airstrikes. On the other hand, deadly fighting erupted yet again in Darfur. Multiple ceasefire attempts have been made since the conflict broke out on the 15th of April. The fighting continued despite a ceasefire brokered by the United States and Saudi Arabia. According to reports, while Burhan agreed on the IGAD proposal on extending the truce by further 72 hours, the RSF's response to the proposal still remains unclear. Now, at least 512 people have been killed and more than 4,000 have been wounded in the fighting so far. A fifth batch of Indians have been evacuated from Sudan. The evacuees are on their way to Jeddah right now, and according to India's Foreign Secretary, Indian authorities are also aiding transfer of nationals from other countries. The ministry has also lauded Saudi Arabia's big support in the operations. India launched Operation Kaveri 3 days back to bring back its citizens home. So far, around 600 Indians have been rescued from conflict-hit Sudan. The European Union has struck a deal to set binding targets for airlines to increase use of sustainable aviation fuels. This is part of an effort to kickstart a market for green fuels and cut the aviation sector's carbon footprint. According to the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, the rules lay out obligations on fuel suppliers and airlines to scale up use of sustainable aviation fuel. The measures will apply to all aircraft leaving EU airports, whether the airline itself comes from the EU or not. Now, Spain is facing extreme heat, and the latest, a carriage horse collapsed in the middle of the road and died after suffering from dehydration. According to the meteorological agency, this month was likely to be the most intense April on the peninsula since records began. Now, Seville has boosted its emergency services budget and brought in extra healthcare workers to deal with heat exhaustion. As King Charles' coronation ceremony approaches, there are still some British citizens who remember the time when Queen Elizabeth II was coronated. 90-year-old Joyce Lewis remembers camping out on the Mall in London for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953. While debate on the importance and relevance of monarchy in the modern times is on, people like Joyce happily remember the Queen's coronation. To mark the upcoming coronation of Britain's new king on May 6th, London's Madame Tussauds has revealed a new wax figure of Britain's Queen Consort Camilla. The new waxwork is dressed in a replica blue gown that the Queen Consort wore to the annual diplomatic reception in December of 2022 at Buckingham Palace. The wax figure is also finished with royal accessories, including crafted replicas of the late Queen Elizabeth II's Belgian sapphire tiara and matching sapphire necklace. This will be Madame Tussauds' London 8th coronation collaboration with Buckingham Palace since the Waxwork Museum opened in 1835.